YouTube, it's the aviation enthusiast again with another video on Airwaysim 50 tips. This is part 2, so if you missed the first one, make sure you watch the first part before following on with this one. But as we go again, here's the next step in terms of the points from 11 to 20 on terms of 50 critical tips for Airwaysim. So we'll just get into it. So point 11 is frequency is very important in Airwaysim. So the more often you fly to a destination, the bigger benefit you will have over your competitors. Now, it does tend to stop after 8 flights, so you have to kind of work the size of the aircraft as well. And it doesn't mean that you can just fly any aircraft. You still got to try and find the most optimal fleet type for that route possible. So you can't just fly 10 times with a rubbish aircraft versus 6 times with a more efficient aircraft. So you have to make it work and find which one is the best way forward. The frequency is very important in terms of how the load factors are determined. Point number 12. A lot of airlines tend to be overly obsessed with company image just for the sake of it, and they chase it through spending on marketing excessively to just boost up that company image. Yes, it's important to drive some of your load factors, but it's not worth overspending on your marketing. That will just cripple your profits and slow your rate of growing. So you have to kind of find a happy balance, and I would never spend more than 10% of my ticket sales on marketing, for example. If you spend more than that, you know you're overspending. And again, if you also watch one of my other videos in terms of how to start up an airline, it shows you that you should not overspend on marketing from the beginning, because everybody's company image grows at the same rate initially. It just stops at different intervals depending on how much you spend, so you can manage that spend accordingly as well. So watch that video to get you some insights on that. In terms of the next point, many new players and some other players, they're obsessed with market share, especially early on, and load factor percentages, and focus on those numbers. Me personally, I care more about profit because it allows me to reinvest and grow more. So I'd rather run an airline at 60% load factor with tons of profit than a good airline with 80% load factor, for example, but less profit. So it will slow you down over the long run. So you can increase your prices if you have good load factors and drive that profit up. Again, early on, I wouldn't focus on market share. And market share comes over time eventually anyway, as you reinvest that profit, and you'll eventually catch up and become the market leader if you follow the right strategy. Point number 14. In new game modes, never ever, I cannot emphasize enough, start with ordering new aircrafts. Always use aircrafts from the used market. This is also in one of my points that I've mentioned in the first one. This is why you want to start at the beginning of a game world, because if you join typically after 2 years into a game, the used market will be, as dry as anything. There'll be no aircrafts, or only the bad aircraft will be there, so you can't even start. So you're just stuck. But if you're starting in the beginning of a game world, always use aircraft. New aircrafts will actually take you between typically 2 to 3 months before you get the first one, and you're just so far behind, and it's not worth it. So always start with aircraft from the used market, because they're typically cheaper and you get faster access to them as well. So again, another point that you need to understand is what fleet types are available right now, but also what fleet types are in storage. So aircrafts that are in storage will eventually appear on the used market, and you want to emphasize that they are available in storage. They will come available, but also what production lines are still open. Are you going to get an aircraft that you want to order more of in the future? Can you still order it? Is the production line still open or not? So you need to see on the new aircraft, does that aircraft still appear in the list? If it doesn't, that means you can't order any more of it, and you'll just be stuck with whatever that's on the used market or still in storage to be released. So you got to keep an eye on that as well. Point 16 is use 7-day scheduling as much as possible. Now, I have a separate video on how to do 7-day scheduling, so you might want to check that one out. But 7-day scheduling, it's all about aircraft utilization. Make it as efficient as possible. Fly your planes overnight, and just having the best return on investment of your planes, and you will get really efficient. And practice is perfect. I would say the more you practice, the better you'll get at scheduling, and you will see certain airports are easier than others, but with experience, you'll find a way, and you'll eventually get there. Point 17 is early on, use loans as much as possible early in new game modes to fuel your growth. So you got to keep pushing your loans whenever you can, get that money, reinvest it, because it's all about growing your airline before the routes are completely saturated. So any sort of cash you can get hold of, get it and use it. It's as simple as that. With that in mind though, it's important that you just don't focus on your income statement. So it's not just about the profit, it's also looking at your cash flow statement, because when you have a loan, the loan fee, so the actual interest rate only will appear on the income statement, but the full repayment is visible on the cash flow statement. So you have to manage your cash flow. If not, you could quickly run out of cash and you'd be wondering, but my airline is profitable, but you're repaying so much in loans that actually your cash is negative, that eventually you run out of cash and then you have issues elsewhere. So I would definitely keep an eye out on that one. Make sure that you keep an eye on your cash flow statement at all times. When you play longer game modes and eventually you will have generate cash, you want to make sure that you start to own aircraft, typically as long as you want to fly them for more than 7 years. It's typically around 7 years, the balance between the cost of leasing the aircraft for 7 years versus the cost of purchasing an aircraft. The benefit you have with owning the aircraft is that you can use it for secured loans, but also you have a depreciation, which kind of is a tax benefit, because it comes down to your income statement, so you pay less tax, but in fact, it doesn't have a cash impact, so it gets kind of, if you will see it reappear on your cash flow statement. So the more aircraft you own, typically you can run at lower profit margin and squeeze out your competitors as well. So owning aircraft, especially if you plan to fly them more than 7 years, do it. Yes, you will have to do a D check, but typically you will look to own the aircraft that you fly for as long as possible. Now, early in the game, you won't be able to do that because you won't have the cash, but over time, it's something you definitely want to consider. And point number 20 is early on in the game, you will have new routes. There'll be no route image on them, and in another video, as I said, you will see route image is quite important to drive your load factors up. So it's important to early on in the game do some route marketing on some key strategic routes before you increase your frequency. So the more you have of the route image, the more frequency you can start to add on a route, and then it will draw that demand towards you, and you can start seeing your load factors increase dramatically. So route marketing is important early on in the game world. Over time, you might find it less essential and let it grow naturally, but early on, typically I do 1 to 2 month route marketing campaigns just to get that little boost up and running, and making sure that my routes become profitable as soon as possible, really. So that's really these 11 to 20 tips that I've mentioned today. Hope you enjoy these. Keep an eye out for the next installments. Don't forget to subscribe or like this video. Click that bell, and I look forward to seeing you at the next video. Take care. Bye.